Welcome back, everyone, to LCS Academy Week 4, Day 2. It is time for game number 5. We are about to ramp into it, Crumbs, as it's going to be Dignitas Academy versus Evil Genius Academy. And after what we have been seeing from these teams, Crumbs, I am very excited to see them face off.
Yeah, especially with the upsets that have happened today. So seeing teams realize, okay, maybe these champions might be more effective today. Picks like the Renekton Nidalee, like we saw yesterday, Renekton combinations, Udyr is still very powerful, and just being able to handle the engages, it has been a really important thing. So the engage supports in the bottom lane have been dictating so much of this game thus far. So we'll see now how the engages bear out once again, because Seraphine has never made it. So maybe this will be the game where we get to shake up the regular order that has been dictating the first four.
Maybe. Only time will tell. Yeah, Seraphine's been on the ban block all day. We'll have to see if she makes any appearances. But as far as the match that we have ahead, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Dignitas Academy. Their game yesterday was very convincing in the sense of showing the strength that they do have and what could be brought to the table because of the players and the veteranship on that side. I mean, you're looking specifically at what was happening in this top lane, the way that Acadian was able to work hand in hand with Lorlo to position themselves to get this lead going here. And I think when you're looking at these players, Crumbs, that have been on Dignitas Academy from the last season as well, they truly have become kind of pillars for their overall performance.
Yeah, you really hope to see Acadian and Lurla do more of what they've done in this game. In fact, you kind of wish, like, oh, I wish they were doing this a little bit sooner because of how effective it's turned out to be. So it's something that I think teams need to recognize when you see the Renekton, that they're just going to go after this lane. You need to defend these lanes, whether it's your jungler needs to end those routes, the support needs to find the timing. So making sure that a game for your top lane doesn't go the way that Tapoons went this time around, where he's going to left to dry, is how you can deal with Acadian and Lorlo teaming up again, or whoever has a duo that is like Talia, Leona, these kinds of combinations that just demand attention. You just cannot ignore them.
Yeah, and we were just saying how these engaged supports have been a lot of the storyline for today in these games. And when you're looking at a support like JJ, who has been around for quite some time, has made sure to develop a lot of the skills down in that position and on the Galio, as well as other picks that he has brought to the table, can really offer exactly what you're looking for, whether it's the Leona, whether it's the Thresh or the Galio, somebody that can come and make that happen alongside the other veteran players and position their younger talent that they're looking to develop. But they will be facing off against Evil Genius's Academy, a very exciting team to watch for multiple reasons here, Crumbs. I think for one, that you're obviously looking at some of the known faces, someone like Contracts, who has been really trying to get back into his element here, but then some of the other ones as well. Mystique's kind of having a bit of a slow start, but has been coming online a bit more in recent games.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see where EG's Academy lineup lands in comparison to their LCS roster and the development team, since it seems like this is a year that EG has taken to be a lot more about developing their talent and making sure that the NA youth is being well taken care of. So seeing how the Academy team starts to develop, whether it's prioritizing synergies like we see the Golden Guardians that goes after globals, or maybe they play to a bot side, and just the way that they approach the game and start to develop should tell us more about what EG as an organization views the NA scene.
We want to see those players developed as well. Like you said, I mean, Jojo Pyun has been a point of power on the side of EG Academy, being one of those pickups that comes from that amateur scene experience. And when you're pairing that with a couple of the scouting ground pickups as well, Shoryu, that has been known, did spend a little time in Academy prior, but has now making the return with that scouting grounds appearance to prove where he belongs within this lineup. And then Tony top too, when so much of the conversation is going towards that top lane and where a lot of the junglers can be focusing their attention in some of these matchups, then you're looking to those young faces and being able to handle their own against the veterans on the opposite side here. But we've got our lineup, Crumbs. Again, the question to you, who are you looking at most?
Lorlo Acadian versus Tony Top and Contracts. I think that Dignitas has had a really rough academy season. I think for the veterans that they have on this team, I'm sure Lorlo, Acadian, Yasui, and even Spawn and JJ to an extent are not satisfied with this beginning, with how much time they have been playing. So I think that they have found success with the Lorlo Acadian combination. I think they'll draft to it again now that they're on red side. And so Tony and Contracts need to be ready to defend those dives or even have better champions in a 2v2 skirmish. And if you can start even adding more people to the mix, whether it's Jojo Pion teleporting and supports finding roams, or AD carries like Kaisa's being able to shadow top laners, just all the help you can get to diminish where the enemy is going to strike.
Despite the fact that, I mean, the score lines for these teams, you've got 3 and 4 for Dignitas Academy Evil Geniuses sitting in 2 and 5. It becomes a little difficult to predict how it'll go because of some of the weaknesses on each side. There are moments where you can tell that the communication isn't quite there. Maybe there's a bit of a lack of voice in moments in who is making the calls, and that's why you might see a game where everything is together, collected, they follow effectively on that early lead, and then other games where when things get a little more wishy-washy in the mid game, oh, where do we go from here? And that's where you can either kind of fall into great leads or end up getting capitalized upon and punished for that level of indecision. So whichever team here can come through with a very clear plan, whether it be from what they pick up in the drafting phase, but also bringing that onto the Rift and just that level of understanding in their win conditions, then keeping to that the most should result in a win.
Yeah, I'm always sticking to basics. Always sticking to your practice is the best way to go about these wins, because obviously you want to react to what's happening inside the game, but if your team is not on that same page as well, now you're throwing everybody off a different plan. So oftentimes the safest way is to just go with what you know your teammates are also aware of, because that's how you avoid mistakes, right? One person gets caught, well, if 4 people are there with them, did they really get caught, or were you just there for a counter engage? So that's the kind of attitude that I think can get a lot of these teams on the same page, and refining that gameplay to be a lot more of a 5-man unit instead of 5 individuals running together.
And with this being the last game of the day, I also am leaving it to these teams to see if they bring out any of the picks that we haven't seen yet. We know the Silas was banned once today, but we also know that that has been played by Jojo Pyun, and often, as we've seen in past games, can be an answer when you're going against a Nard. Being able to take an ultimate like that can be so effective in team fights. So some of those differences that we're looking to maybe come out here to enable the team in a way that we haven't yet seen today, because we are in those kind of final stretch of the regular games where the teams are running out of time to experiment with different comps and really get them online before they go into that kind of playoff territory where you start to really feel the effect of the losses that you pick up.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a short season, so you really feel the effect of these losses now. So I think that the teams that felt like they could buy their time in this split are in for a sore surprise, because there is no more time. It's pretty much playoffs time already, so you needed to have been very quick with your development. And it kind of makes me think that if the seasons were to continue this way, where there is a earlier focus in performance, then there is an even stronger emphasis on management and the people that are building rosters, as opposed to the ones that are actually developing them and making sure that they grow over time, because you are getting a lot more value from just putting together something that already works and doesn't need that much more help.
And that's why you kind of look at those starting places of some of these players, whether they be veteran or not, and what they offer to the team as a whole in terms of compositions that you can bring out. Because even just in the pool size alone, Spawn, that's been one of the talked about AD carries when we're talking about Academy, trying to hone that North American talent and develop them. He was picked up from scouting grounds, and in his time within these games that we have seen over these past few weeks has had quite a large sample. I think 7 different ADCs compared to maybe Shoryu on the opposite side. Whereas if we're looking at where some of those limitations come from, Acadian, a lot of that strength comes when being on picks like Nidalee and being able to form around that to create the leads over in that top side. But if that gets pressed a little bit when going against someone like Contracts that has been trying to facilitate the team in various different ways, if it works out in EG's favor, you can try to shut down that threat before it really comes online on the side of Dignitas and becomes too much of a problem.
Yeah, well, hopefully Dignitas doesn't draft to the point where there is only one threat on the side of Lorelo and Acadian. They should be able to get a little bit more there, since Yasui tends to be fairly consistent if he has the right champion for mid lane, and JJ has been doing well, and obviously we've already mentioned Spawn as you have hit on him. So I think the Dignitas just needs to take advantage of the red side, and don't paint yourself into a corner from your level 1, because it's a story that has happened this week, last week, where red side drafts a edgy champion to counter something, and then you go for a very aggressive trade level 1 or something that's a little bit too out there that wasn't entirely in the game plan, and then you just lose. And so everybody points at the pick. Oh yes, the pick was the problem, but the play was wrong from the very beginning. So that's something I really need to see these teams avoid. If you're going to experiment, make sure you get to the point where the experiment doesn't break before you actually get to start it.
Yeah, you want to be able to see it in full effect. And I mean, that's the thing about the game of League of Legends, right? There's so many different factors. It typically isn't just the draft or just this play. You have to be able to play into it all very effectively. And I mean, between Evil Geniuses Academy and Dignitas Academy, both kind of middle of the pack teams right now that are wanting with their best effort to secure that they can go directly into Proving Grounds, as opposed to having to hit one of those other tier tournaments to get themselves there, because there are distinct cutoff points within the standings. But we're going to be getting into Champ Select for this game, our last game of the day. Crumbs, can you believe it?
I cannot. This has been very fun. It's your first 5 full set, and it's actually a very This is grinding. This is the grind, right? Because usually it's two per, but you're going straight off the deep end with 5.
Oh, I'm so excited. I've had so much fun here today with you, Crumbs, and getting to cast Academy has been truly a pleasure. And I hope that we get to end it with a banger, because I mean, between base races and upset Team Liquid pulling their first loss, it is everything I could have hoped for. But we aren't going to see the Seraphine at all today, because she's just been hanging down in the ban block.
Academy is my what do you call it? My guilty pleasure, where you don't really tell other people like, oh yeah, I'm enjoying this. I've been chilling. I've just been watching these superior drafting. Like they draft more relevant to the rest of the world, since they're trying to experiment a little bit more. So that's kind of been the case for a few years in the Academy scene. And so now that teams and players are starting to put their eyes more into Academy, since everyone's about developing talent, now it looks like our guilty secret, our guilty pleasure of the Academy games is starting to be revealed.
Yeah, I've heard from you and Emily and other analysts about how Academy should be a place that a lot of people look when they are looking for that experimentation, being that it is a league that looks so much towards the outskirts of the entire global scene for that inspiration. And you do have a lot of that shared management and things with teams over, obviously, with their sister LCS team. So you kind of hope for some of that to spread through all these players as they get talking and saying, oh, what are going to be the next big picks here for North America? But Evil Geniuses Academy trying to make sure that Nidalee will not be available for Acadian, and instead it is Contracts that's piloting the pick.
Yeah, it's telling I dare you to pick Renekton, or else we will take it. So Dig says, all right, we will take the Renekton, since there isn't entirely the best APs now. You've got Nidalee and Taliyah already taken away, so the AP combo isn't quite there, but it's not like Renekton doesn't get to do Renekton things with another bruiser dive buddy. So champions like Olaf can still be very relevant with him, and if you want to see Acadian pick that one up. So it won't be Lane Kingdom on the side of Lorelor or Yasui if they put him there, but it'll still be a very powerful Crocodile.
That's the nice thing about Renekton. While there are pairings that will definitely enable him a bit more, there are multiple in that regard, and just somebody who has had such an effectiveness, not in just in the lane phase, but when you get into that team fight potential. So it's Gnar that will be locked in for Evil Geniuses Academy. I think that they assume that maybe Lorelo will be bringing this out. I mean, Gnar is just somebody that's going to be safely picked into a lot of the top laners so that he can poke them down and keep them controlled in that lane and securing the Xayah for some of that reliable damage and that escapability with her ultimate. But it's the Lilia that we get to see come out to play on the side of Dig Academy.
Yeah, just the AP threat here, just a little more utility, nice and easy there, but not any crazy combos. I think Lilia usually gets to be really fun with something like a Misfortune, where the sleep and the ultimate work together. So with the Kai'Sa, it's like, okay, you sleep her, and maybe the Kai'Sa gets to follow through, or the Kai'Sa can jump in and also assist with the poke, since they're kind of similar long-range spells, but it'll be up to Acadian's play to make sure that the Lilia is worth it, because he's no longer with that kind of easy point and click synergy that the Renekton and Nidalee had before, and he'll now have to be a lot more useful in the team fights and not just in the lane.
And you're going to have to look out to see with what they do pair, as you said, with that Lilia to make sure that those sleeps are effective as possible. EG Academy deciding to ban out the Rel, who known for engage support, but even more importantly can be that great secondary engage in scenarios as well when you're thinking about the sleep and making sure that you keep that lockdown in the team fights so that people like Kai'Sa can dish out as much damage as humanly possible. So the bans still go that way, along with Alistar, more of the support focus being that has yet to be locked in here on either side.
Yeah, and you still got Leona available here if any of these teams want to go with an engage support that they can blind right now, and it'd be pretty powerful to take right now, since Nautilus is probably the response from either of these teams. It's going to be like Nautilus versus Leona. You got Galio, still the same kind of wheelhouse, but with the Galio, you don't have a Camille that just flies in, but it looks like it could easily be a Camille, because you could put Renekton in the mid lane, and now you could have Renekton, Camille, Galio. It's something very different, but Dignitas would be the team to do so, because Yusui loves to take weird things into the mid lane. He'll do melee champions there any day of the week, and Camille against the Gnar with a Galio that can help him out. I mean, it's Galio support, but it's a guaranteed kill when you have the Galio in range with ult.
Yeah, and Camille has been one of the picks that's been banned a lot today, either that or the Galio. So it almost kind of feels like, well, if we got the Galio and Camille hasn't been banned away, is that something that we go for? EG Academy, Braum has been locked in here. I think there's only been one Braum pick in Academy. I don't recall if that was on this squad or not, which he has a lot of strength just in what he offers in his defenses, and he can get some level of engage with his ultimate that pairs better with certain ultimates compared to others. And right now you're going to be able to protect against some of the poke on the opposition and keep your carries more protected, especially when you have someone like the Nidalee and the Xayah, as well as the Orianna here, that could all be looking for someone to keep them protected. So instead they do go with that more traditional tank and what he offers to this type of fight. And Dig Academy, they do end up getting the Aurelia locked in here in this regard to finish things off. So no Camille, but still another strong pick.
Yeah, needed another bruiser. I really like this. I think it's going to go to Yusui. He likes playing these matchups, so the Aurelia is just a very exciting pick always. I love seeing this champion just because her mechanics can always be so flashy. And your point about Braum, I think a cool thing that I always like to see with Braum is that you actually have 4 ranged champions to work with him. So it's a lot easier to proc the concussive blows, the stun. It's just amazing with him when you have that range synergy. So the Nidalee Braum combination can be very deadly as a 2v2 because of that. So somebody like the Lilia, Braum just needs to flash auto attack her, and then everybody else just auto attack her, and suddenly she's locked down, and all these members that are trying to dive like Aurelia and Renekton will have a very difficult time not getting CC'd by Braum.
And if you can get yourself a really good Unbreakable or something, just denying what somebody like Kai'Sa could be bringing to you, then it feels oh so good as Braum. Yeah, you're not going to be the one dealing damage, but you can definitely mitigate a lot of it. EG Academy and Dignitas Academy facing off now for our last game of the day. As we said before, both are currently in the middle of the pack when it comes to standings. We're in the final moments of the regular season to determine who will be moving on directly to Proving Grounds and who will have to compete in some of those other tier tournaments to get themselves there. Interestingly enough, though, Crumbs, in his last interview, I believe Acadian was saying it's kind of a win-win for them, because obviously you do want to go into Proving Grounds, but if they do not make that cut, he was very excited about the fact that they do get more games, those that are in the amateur scene that are continually practicing in these tournaments. And when you look at a lot of the rosters that are competing in those tournaments alongside the academy ones that will be joining them, there is a lot of competition there and a lot of talent that is there to be tested and keep these players on the grind.
Yeah, and keeping on the grind is a really fun thing, because just getting those extra games is one thing, but getting those extra games with the new players, the hungry players that you might not have ever known, or the ones that are playing the game in a different way just because you have been around for so long, can really rekindle the fire that a lot of players have. So it is not bad to just spend time with the new players, with the best players. You can really learn from everybody else, since the game is constantly changing. So if Acadian is okay with going down into that tournament, then so be it. He's ready to learn the lessons it can offer him.
Hey, happy players make me happy, Crumbs, and it seems like if you're going to be happy either way, then let's have it. Though I'm sure they would love to come out with the victory here. Contracts and Acadian are starting on opposite sides of the jungle, so they may not be crossing for some time. And everybody else has started to get their way into these lanes and the farming beginning. Yasui, you mentioned, loves to be on picks like this as well, and having a mid laner who can have that versatility in the melee and the range has become more and more important to a lot of these squads.
Oh, it's so huge. Just being able to be flexible in your style, because what's happening with so many champions is that the enemy is going to, at some point, paint themselves into a corner with their draft that allows you to get advantages in the laning phase if you can pick the right champions, if you can win the right matchups. And so this is one of them, and now both junglers are here.
Oh no, yeah, Sui ends up getting chunked down a bit, and Contracts right over the wall. Jojo Piyun is here for some answers, and Contracts ends up flashing over towards the back. Acadian wants to get the kill, but the kill will not be awarded. Instead, everyone is low, and both of the junglers have expelled their flashes.
That was really close there. Yasui, I think, might have had another Q that could have dashed onto Contracts, although he's the kind of player that would have definitely gone for it. So if he didn't do it, I give him the benefit of the doubt that it wasn't available there. But it just shows you, everybody knows how important this matchup is. They need to linger just so that Aurelia can crash the wave. That's why everybody was there. She needed to reset it, and instead it'll be the Orianna that bases and TPs, since her Q just gives her way too much sustain.
The poke that Orianna can do to try and make sure that she continually pushes this wave. That is something that on the side of Yasuo you would love to be able to counter at an earlier stage, as the junglers tried to do.
All right, so let's see how it actually plays out. Could Aurelia have dashed? No, he already used the second dash onto the Nidalee there. Maybe if he did dash auto and then waited for the dash, but Aurelia mechanics are just always like fractions of seconds in between fractions of seconds. So not for me. We need a 12-year-old that is watching dubstep videos that can keep up to know what Aurelia mechanics can do.
She wants to get those blades all shiny and sparkly with that Ionian Fervor, and then hit you pretty hard with some nice combos. So you got to be very careful of that. And that's why Aurelia is always just really fun to watch, especially as you get later in the game and you can see her completely lock on to somebody with Vanguard's Edge and just take out a target, separating everybody from it. So don't want that to get too out of control if you're on the side of EG. Things were going pretty evenly down in the bot lane, and some will be going back to base right now to get some more powerful itemization for them to help them in this laning phase. A pickaxe on both sides for the ADCs. And then all the while in the top lane, fairly even in CS at this point as well. Tony Top wants to keep his hands on to that TP, so just walking it back now.
It's always fun to see when everybody's base, or at least where most people have base. The bottom lanes were already recalled. The junglers were just in another part of the map farming. So they both make it back on the map at the same time. So we get to see if they end up meeting at the same spot. And in fact, they do. Contracts and Mystique's already grouping up taking advantage of that range and Braum synergy. Look at that, hopping over the walls.
Oh.
Right? You start to see how synergistic these two can be, and if the Galio isn't careful, you could just get killed very quickly.
Yeah, luckily, I had the Justice Punch there to get out of range of any Q or anything beyond, because it'll take some time before you get to be too strong of a bruiser here, and they have to be careful because there is still some presence here on the side of Dignitas. You have Galio just hanging out with Acadian here in the jungle to make sure that they can keep some safety against this ever so pressing forward Evil Genius's squad. Mystiques and Contracts are here to harass with Shoryu coming behind, and there's the taunt coming in from Mystiques, and Jay has to flash away, and Acadian just tries to pressure them by his forward positioning. Oh, eats a Q in the process, but he knows that with the backing off of EG, they're not going to be in a position to follow up on this. Yasui even rotating slightly over from mid just in case a re-engage were to happen from the side of EGA.
I mean, it's silly that Dignitas is taking this fight here because there was nothing to fight over. There is no objective. There's no blue, nothing in the blue. You have nobody with teleport. The enemy has teleport, and your Kaisa is shoved into the turret. So I don't know why they felt like they could have taken the fight. I mean, obviously, if you see somebody that you think you can kill, you go for it, but that wasn't that opportunity.
Everybody seemed kind of like the puff up the chest and, oh, you gonna back off? Oh, are you gonna back off here in the mid lane? Because there's an ultimate from the Irelia to get you in. Contracts says, I don't care if there's an ultimate. We're still here to kill you. A last-ditch attempt from Yasui after being pushed up aggressively here in the mid lane.
It looked like Yasui didn't want to take that fight. He was hesitant. He's like, do I really want to all-in him? He's so close to the turret. I am very strong. My Q is stacked, but I don't really want to take it. Okay, the Nidalee here. I really should take it. All right, let's go for it. So, right, he gets punted back in range, but still not taking turret aggro. But because he's slowed and now thinks that he has the opportunity, but a great flash there out of the Orianna to dodge out of the ultimate, that would have been what would have killed him. If he got hit by that, or the Irelia will kill him with it, or we'll just kill him with the other Q. So that is just good mechanics out of the EG mid laner, getting the 1-for-0 kill.
Yasui hoping that he could get the trade there, but the flash from Jojo Pyun just too effective in that regard to make sure he didn't get too locked down by that Vanguard's edge. And that's going to be the first Drake. With all of the action going down over in the mid lane, Dignitas decide that it is time for us to get an objective into our pocket. So that is the one that they go with. And now with Spawn, or Jay actually ended up going and basing here, then the bot lane on the side of EGA should be able to maybe take out some of these wards that are down here and start getting more of this farm for themselves. It's pretty even down there in the bot lane to boot for both of these ADCs that are going to look to scale.
Yeah, and the even farm is always an exciting point when you don't really have a big skill discrepancy, because it just allows each player to kind of try to style on each other. And Acadian will be slowed down with an auto attack, but Mega Gnar is here with flash, so he needs to flash away ASAP. That is way too scary of a place to go. They went to try to help out the Renekton in case they were thinking of anything else, and even the Rift Herald was a possibility, but when you are faced against Mega Gnar, who has priority in lane, you really need to think about if that's the lane you want to go after.
They were here, they came, they knocked on the door, too many people answered, said, I don't want to be a part of this party. So both JJ and Acadian, while a flash was dispelled on the side of the jungler, they would rather keep their lives in this regard. Knowing that EG Academy, with that positioning, Contracts does secure this Rift Herald, that he can bring that to any of these lanes to try and take down some plates at some point in time. But Tony Top going in with the Mega Gnar and the ultimate, but there is a flash from Lorlo to keep himself up and in it. He said, peace, I'm gonna go back to base for now.
Tony, that's a big move there out of him. That is gonna get a wave crashed in here, and Lorla doesn't have TP. Tony's just been winning this lane flat out. He has not had to base and use that ability to reset his lane, so he's gonna still have that available for any place that the team wants to make in the bot side of the map. So despite the gold being relatively close, I think EG have been very comfortable this game.
Yeah, the way that Tony Top is pressured there in the top lane, then being able to base back without sacrificing any farm in these cases. Mid lane is where we're seeing the next action, though. Jojo Pion, once again, the subject of this Vanguard's edge, and the teleport comes directly into the middle of the lane from Tony Top. Acadian out on the outskirts to try and get some kind of damage onto them, but Yasui is the one that takes the brunt of it. There are a lot of people attending this party right now in the mid lane that are donning the blue from the blue side, so Dignitas Academy do not want to have too much of this fight, being that the majority of the HP on their mid laner was already marked down in that regard.
It is risky to combo the Nidalee with the Orianna right now. The Nidalee in this composition felt like it was more of a deny pick until it was paired with the Braum. So until Contracts and Mystiques keep grouping up, which was how they found that good fight in the blue side, the rest of the fights will really be a lot harder to execute just because there's no easy way for Nidalee to consistently hit those spears. It's not a point and click stun at a distance. You have to aim and rely on anybody else to get a good combo off. So would like to see Contracts and Mystiques group up again. It worked so well that one time they did it. So I would like to see more of it.
And the team fight potential from EG, if you're just looking at their kit. So Braum Ultimate, for instance, with the Glacial Fissure can be effective, but sometimes awkward to navigate if you don't have them properly grouped or you're not in somewhere like the corridors of a jungle, right? That really corral the enemy members. But you have the Shockwave from the Orianna that can have that setup for you to follow upon, and then people like Contracts to follow up with their own damage. You even have a Gnar, whether it be the engage or just the follow up to continue that lockdown for Shoryu and Contracts to get their poke on them. That can be absolutely devastating once they get into that team fight territory. But on the side of Dig 2, they have some good combos that can be going for them, especially when it comes to sustaining through these fights and just trying to use CC like the sleep to make sure that things don't get too out of control. But there's the hop in from Tony Top, gets another stun directly onto Lorlo, and Contracts is here to follow, so the pounce on down, and Acadian comes on through to try and get some sleepy faces on the side of EG, but he is the only one here after the death of his top laner. So plenty of plates taken to set this up for a Herald finish off onto the top turret, and should be getting off another charge as well. So the lead that Tony Top was effectively able to make through his laning phase, superbly capitalized upon by the rest of the team, and now they've got themselves a first turret.
All too easy there out of the side of EG. That was really good. They had the Mega Gnar time. They knew that Renekton was going to get one shot from that distance. They even had the Rift Herald to get even more gold on the map. Dig isn't even in a position to get a dragon right now as a response. As EG has to make it back on the map, they're not able to answer. Kai'Sa is moving right now though, so they will get it. It's just that EG will now be really quick to set up their next play, since the reset was not timed with the time that Nidalee and Gnar killed Lorlo.
Then Dignitas now should be continuing to stack these Drakes because of the action going down on the top side. So, hey, we got wards all around this Drake. Let's go ahead and commit to this win condition. With the 2 Drakes down, that means that we are on the precipice of an Ocean Soul. First one of the day, I think. We had a Mountain Soul and then quite a few Cloud ones come through too. As far as the point of contention for the rest of the fight, though, that hasn't been necessarily the game-ending aspect, much more around kind of barren plays for the games that we had earlier here. But Dignitas, that is a win condition that they are starting to build up for themselves, if anything, to force some of the pressure on EG in future team fights.
Yeah, and that's going to be a pressure that Dig will really feel because they don't have an AP mid laner. It's always much worse when you fall behind and you don't have a conventional mid laner because the wave clear is such a problem. Here with Aurelia, though, they're catching Gnar.
Yeah, JJ is here to try and get the knock up, and that's the bounce over Tony Top, doing the best he can to try and escape, but Spawn and JJ with the combo lockdown. They take out Gnar from this fight, and even Acadian is here towards this top side to make sure that nobody else was lurking on the side of EG. You can see everybody kind of grouped in that jungle position, but looking to find a lead against the top laner that was looking to get pretty scary and just had allotted a lot of pressure onto this top side.
Yeah, that was a really good move there. Finally, we get to see the bottom lane come alive there out of the side of Dignitas, but we need to see what is the EG's response, because now they don't have any summoners and they are really extended. I mean, they are crazy extended and there are no wards and there's TPs on the Orianna, so they could potentially flank them. This Kai'Sa has to be the target. I mean, she has no flash, no ult. There's a ward behind. Oh, boys, please TP onto this bot lane.
We'll have to see what happens down there as Lorlo ends up actually just going away from the bot lane, because in that, you saw that Lorlo had rotated down with the Renekton, and there was no TP available from Tony Top, so he ended up having to walk down, and so much damage was done onto that turret in the meantime. But it's the Rift Herald that Dignitas currently have their sights on. EG has not backed up from this area. Yeah, Orianna is over towards the mid lane to rotate if needed, but the damage on this Rift Herald is already getting marked down. Acadian taking some damage himself from some of this poke. Mystiques has the Unbreakable to put himself into the center of this fight, and Acadian continuing to mark down low. That's Lorlo TPing into the back. He gets his eyes onto Mystiques, but there's Galio also coming in with his own ultimate to try and offer some of the support. The stun onto the Mystiques, and he ends up getting eliminated. A major sense of support not available for EG for that defensive ability. So they rotate back over towards the mid lane, where Yasui is able to just go right between these turrets and contracts, seeing if he can find a pick here. Yasui's still on his own, but Lorlo has come to try and support. There was a nice lockdown onto the enemies so that EG couldn't engross on this too much, and the Blast Cone to get themselves to safety.
Okay, I thought that Dig played that pretty well there, being able to kite back and allow Lorlo's TP to not int him right away.
Ooh.
Good chase there out of contract, so not letting Yasui run away from that. So now EG got so much more out of that, because yeah, Dig only lost a single member, but they were so... They took so long to escape from that play that EG was just able to constantly farm and last hit and be on the map. So this Rift Herald will get them the turret, and so if you see this turret as the aftermath of that fight, it's a very clear EG win.
That commitment worked so well from EG, and you notice that Mystiques has made his way onto Acadian, being over on this bot side, but he did get the sleep, and unfortunately that means another death for Mystiques. And the rest of EG that was here to continue applying some of that pressure do have to swag walk it out a little bit. But they did get that turret in mid off of that second Herald that they got. They've been cracking open this map with 3 turrets in their favor, all of their own still standing on the blue side, and the gold lead also swinging its way over onto EG Academy, seeing exactly what you want to see from someone like Contracts to get strong and really have that impact later in the game.
That was scary. That's a Blade of the Ruined King Aurelia right there, and the bounty on the Orianna. So I would not have wanted to face check that, but we're going to see this chase down again, because how did Contracts end up sniping Yasui? It looks like he ended up just tagging him with a spear at the very end, because this is entirely blind. Okay, come on, man. You can't recall there. Are you serious?
After you see that the spear came out and still recalling there, I mean, you like to see Contracts was jumping in a way. He was hoping no one would see them from that initial spear, but once that's out, then the eyes on Dignitas, unfortunately, not catching it, and you get a death in the process. But still, we are about to be reaching kind of towards that 19-minute point in the game, fairly close, and it could be swung in the favor of Dignitas should they get a fight that works out for them. But this is going to be a Drake focus from EG. They want to deny the stacking that Dignitas has been working towards, and the stacking really only affected because EG was making plays happen on other parts of the map. So you see how difficult it is for Dignitas when they're on a bit of an even playing field here.
And so the side lanes is where the even playing field exists for Dignitas, because dealing with the Aurelia and the Renekton is still very difficult. The Gnar will be fine here, but Yasui is where they want to rely on, who they can trust here with the Blade of the Ruined King. So him, despite being down, still a really strong win condition for Dignitas, and having JJ follow should be a good way for them to get a kill. It's just so difficult if you miss the CC tools to have the Galio actually land on top of somebody and knock them up and lock them down. So mechanically, Yasui needs...
I mean, Aurelia and Renekton both, and what they can pressure in those side lanes. When you have someone like Galio that can come to help, then you don't worry as much about leaving them in those efforts to create those conditions elsewhere in the map here. But EG and Dignitas, they're definitely fighting it out for this last one of the day. And you can see that tankiness is starting to build up on the side of Dignitas as well. Contracts just wanting to get a little bit of poke, but obviously in the fights, he will be going for some more of those squishy targets, as those will be hitting extremely hard soon enough.
And speaking of hitting really hard, this Nidalee with that Harvester is just in a crazy spot here. We have seen Babip yesterday won a game for TSM pretty much just from hitting these spears, and that Herald fight, I think Contract's initial spears on the Cadian were a really big factor. So we'll have to watch out for what he does, because otherwise you're really not getting a lot of value, and it'd be easy to criticize his build and say should have gone Moonstone Renewer.
And that's the very different style we're getting out of the junglers, with the Night Harvester coming out for contracts on the Nidalee and making sure that as he's building into those legendaries too, getting his cooldowns even lower so he can spam those very impactful spears, especially with that Soul Rend. But then on the opposite side, Acadian has worked into that Moonstone to be extremely effective in these team fights. That kind of hidden, not necessarily seen on your screen effect that you're just keeping everybody alive, especially when you have these different picks like the Renekton and the Galio that will be looking to absorb a lot of the damage and pressure that's being put down by the opposition in that fight, and hoping to benefit from some of the healing that come from themselves within their kit, but also that Moonstone too. So very different approaches to how things will be going down in the team fights.
Yeah, well, Acadian will also have to land those skill shots plenty and put himself to maximize his life. So it's different as well in not only how it plays out, but how Lilia should move around, because now she really should be thinking about maximizing the damage output, keeping the uptime of the Moonstone Renewer, and less about that big fat combo, since there aren't those amazing tools to combo with. So if Acadian can live through a big fight, it'll really play well with the Gore Drinker, Blade, or the Ruin King build that his solo lanes have gone for.
Make all of the difference. As far as what we've got going down now, there's still quite some time before this Drake goes, so I think these teams are looking to create an advantage here. EG, they just want to get these wards up as much as possible. Maybe they can get a pick with the pressure that they had offered on that top side so early. It allows them to move so much more freely through the jungle at this point, where Dignitas are still working to create some of that pressure in the side lanes. That tier 2 turret on the top side barely chunked down for Dignitas Academy, and wanting to keep that as protected as possible, considering the close proximity of EG Academy on the top side.
And that proximity is just Jojo Pion, who's been quietly farming. He's just been happy to be in the side lanes, picking up CS, and it's what we see in the way that CLG likes to pick the Orianna. You just draft it and put him in the side lanes, have him power farm, and build up a big CS lead so that when the team fights happen, suddenly your tanks are crazy. The ball combo that you don't see that's hidden over the wall is one-shotting your carries, and she's really fast. So that's what Jojo Pion is trying to do here, and is already getting really close to very strong, already having one completed item. And once he hits 2 before this next fight, then that's when EG will start to feel really comfortable with the Nidalee and Orianna being very powerful poke tools. And that's not to forget that the Gnar Boomerang can also be a good zoning tool since it slows.
You have to be wary on that one. We've only got a few seconds before this Drake spawn, so the majority of the teams are all already located around this objective. Yasui does have the TP available if he is needed to make a play with it, and you can see that happening right there on the bot side to join the fight. The same side that Lorlo is coming in with his ultimate to try to get this lockdown. Shoryu responding with the ultimate of his own, and JJ is here in the back to go ahead and get the Justice Punch, but does he get enough of a knockup? There is the Drowsy onto Mystique, who flashes back to the rest of the team. It's the support that's gone down on the side of Dignitas, but a lot of damage as the Vanguard's Edge gets some separation onto the members of EG. They are trying to get themselves out of this fight, but it is not enough. Dignitas end up rolling through 3 of the team members of Evil Geniuses Academy and can bring themselves back to clear these waves and secure this objective.
They had a really nice flank there with Lorlo coming in by himself there through the brushes of the ocean map, but then the Galio coming in, and so Shoryu with the ultimate does buy a lot of time, yet since they're on the retreat, it's so much harder for them to combo anything. The shockwave doesn't do a whole lot. So let's take a look at this once again, because I want to see Yasui more than anything. Since Lorlo, right, initial engage, Zaya gets the stun, and then Galio combos through, everybody flashes out, but then watch Yasui, right, big ultimate, and now a huge 5-man ultimate. Yeah, the stun doesn't go through, and yeah, you would have liked him to him not hesitate. You would have loved to see him go in, but the rest of the team is there for the follow-up. They get all the kills. They don't get the dragon. Or sorry, they did get the dragon, but you want to see them maybe go for a Baron off of that. And so they didn't get it. They just got the mid-tier 1, but they just have a lot of confidence in how they can play these fights out since the Aurelius just showed up.
It proves how effective and how important these duelists are in this fight, because that side flank was, first by Lorlo, who was making his way there, and he did everything that he could do, and even that delay coming in from Yasui was enough, but gonna get some poke down onto spawn here as you got the 3v3 here in the mid lane, but you still got those escape mechanics. Someone like Jay who can just get himself out of that and position himself between the damage that EG can dish out. But yes, I mean, you're looking at Lorlo on this Renekton compared also to Yasui being able to come through and follow up, and it's just so effective in the way that they can make sure that they get that lockdown eventually.
And that lockdown will be really important now. There's a lot of members with hourglasses now. The stopwatches are a big pain when it comes to trying to crowd control members and combo them together. So the Galio, the Aurelia, the Lilia, they are really difficult to lock down. And now you have Nidalee added to the mix. So these team fights are fairly mechanically intensive. So keeping your eyes out on who has flashes that can combo into somebody is really important. And it looks like Dignitas has Renekton very close. They're aching for a fight since they won that last one, but they just don't have those flashes to really jump on EG.
Jojo Pune has also built into that Oblivion Orb. We mentioned the Moonstone Renewer and what that can offer in team fights in terms of healing, plus the built-in healing into some of the kits on the side of Dignitas Academy. So seeing that Grievous Wounds brought out, especially on a pick like Orianna, where you do see that traditionally because of the application that you can apply to try and diminish some of that healing in these fights when it becomes a problem. But EG, despite not coming out on top during that last team fight, the Drake score has been evened out to Oceans on their side too, which will also help them with their sustain when it comes to sticking into these fights, and also put it on the even-keeled objective territory. Also really even in gold here too, Crumbs, because it has been fight after fight with kind of kills going down on both sides.
Even in gold, even in dragons, and yeah, it is even, yet I like what I'm seeing out of Dig right now because of where their gold is at. You have so much more on the Kai'Sa, whereas I'm usually not a fan of seeing Nidalees get a lot of gold. It's something that is often quite difficult to get the most out of, since in that last fight, you actually saw those first two big spears go wide. So how much value was there really gotten from the Nidalee? Not as much as you got from the Kai'Sa. So we just need to see contracts be really on point, or else Spawn will have a much easier time getting more value out of the Kraken Slayer Collector RSC he's got.
Dishing out even more of that true damage in these fights, and the more that he can poke them down, the more effective it will become, because Kai'Sa, we love to see her in that late game, the way that she can follow up with the defenses that are put forth by the rest of this composition for Dignitas Academy. Now with 20 seconds to go on this Drake, I can't believe we're already at another Drake here. Evil Geniuses Academy making sure to put their wards around it, best position themselves should we get another team fight. And the last time they fought was around this very objective, Crumb. So perhaps wanting to avoid the flanks that were oh so powerful for Dignitas Academy, and instead they're going to go ahead and position themselves more towards this bush. It is actually vision established for Dignitas as well, being that they did get that scuttle before. So this dragon burns down really effectively at this rate, so it's 3 for EG.
Oh, they're still looking for the flank, though.
Yeah, the TP from Dignitas in the back, and Lorlo has brought himself into the middle of the equation, and JJ is here to follow up. Sure, you got so separated from the rest of the team and brought down by Spawn. The attempted engage from this Aurelia over here towards the back, but Dignitas Academy have kept themselves in this fight and alive. 2 down on the side of EG, and now they are continuing to be effective in these team fights. Tony Top and Jojo Piyun completely separated into different lanes, and Dignitas, off of that, they lose the Drake prior to that fight, but off of those picks, they're able to move themselves directly onto the Baron here to try and get an objective that should be Dawn in that purple and some more objective control for them in the end.
You want to avoid getting flanked, yet there is still a crocodile at your flank. So it's a very difficult thing to hope that Dignitas doesn't see the opportunity, but they immediately recognize, hey, Lorlo is very strong, and they are divided here. So yeah, EG comes in here and gets that dragon there, but Lorlo is so strong here. You've got a Galio coming in from the other side, so where can they run here? Shoryu has no way out, has to disengage with the ultimate, but then everybody else is flashing in. The Kai'Sa loves these kinds of compositions. Why? Kai'Sa Renekton, Kai'Sa Galio, just champions that dive, synergize so well with her, and now it feels like the game is really getting out of EG's hands. Dignitas is getting so strong that no member can match the flank or survive the CC long enough for the rest of the team dogpiles on top of it.
At this stage in the game, I mean, you're looking over to Contracts, you're looking over to Shoryu, and the fact that they just got completely separated from one another by Dignitas kind of dissecting after that flank, getting into the jungle position. And even though Shoryu eventually fell before dying, was already just a non-factor for the rest of the fight, a big source of damage that they couldn't access anymore on the side of EGA. Dignitas seem very confident in their team fighting ability as a unit. So even though they're kind of being more tempered in when they decide to go in on this and not getting too agitated with themselves and trying too much to get, oh, we want to get this dragon too, instead biding their time for that proper positioning. And now with the Baron, it's just going to allow them to continue crashing this. Once the waves get there, they do still need to wait for that for some of the effectiveness, but making sure that they keep this pressure on these objectives.
All right, so now Dignitas, so they do have the Baron on multiple members with a TP still on Lorlo, though. So I think that's the way that they can use the Baron to split EG apart, who doesn't have a very good engaged composition. The Braum is way more about peel, much less about being a good initiator. So it's going to divide EG's attention really difficultly because they won't be able to have a lot of lockdown. You really need Mystiques to be there to combo with those auto attacks, or else you're looking for a wombo out of the Orianna, which is fairly easy to see coming.
It wasn't that long ago, Crumbs, that we were looking at the scoreboard and saying this is an even gold game, even Drakes. There were three turrets that were taken down on both sides. But it just shows that when you have crested over this point, that Dignitas making the most of a single play, a single objective. We know how powerful Baron can be, and it is 6 turrets in favor of Dig. They have effectively gotten to that inhibitor line where things get mighty scary for EG, because it's just not just a matter of your defenses, it's your inability now to go forth freely into the rest of the map, because so much of that fight had been congested that they don't have any wards or anything that are kind of lingering around to allow them to position in any of these cases. So it's very vulnerable for them at this point.
Okay, and that vulnerability is ready to get exploited here, as Dignitas is just staying completely grouped, not giving EG an opportunity to get back into this game. As if they can't find picks, then they're not going to get a good team fight there. JJ is at this point way too big. His taunt area is actually just big enough to make sure that nobody even gets one shot. Your ideal thing is shockwave into, say, Xayah, Brahma, Nidalee, even Gnar flying in, but there's too much disruption now. Here's the TP. It's the last fight.
He is going to get in that flank positioning, so EG, you got to be careful from your jungle, honey, because there's Lorlo right into the back line, and the Galio will be here for the additional support. Shoryu taking so much damage before he gets that ultimate off, now out of range for the time being, but that is such a smash down onto Jojo Pune, completely blasted in the center of Dignitas Academy. They continue in pursuit. Tony Top manages to get a Gnar ultimate onto them as his last dying breath before he falls, and the solo laners falling here. Dignitas feeling pretty good about it to continue pushing this way forth.
They can end the game. They've got flash on Lorlo, flash on JJ. If they can flash and stun somebody that is caught out of position, this game is over right here, right now. They're going for it.
Oh, they are. It's just 2 more turrets. That's going to be the flash forward from Jay. Ends up trying to get the knockup, but it is mitigated somewhat. And Shoryu completely eliminated. Mystiques has to step back into the fountain to get a little bit of heal, but it's just himself and Contracts. They do not have enough power to hold off against this. Contracts' last dish effort to go in and Zanya's and get some damage down, but it is the Nexus that gets the last effects from Dignitas Academy, pulling out a win to bring their week 2-0 for themselves, Crumbs. Woo! Love to see that fighting there in the end.
Yeah, Dignitas coming back alive there. We're getting animated. You're getting rhythmic here with the, you're getting lyrical rather with the calls. And so Dignitas really feeling it. The 2-0 week, a lot of it coming off the back of the Renekton. Who would have thought? The answer is Renekton. Just pick a lane that gives you a place to play around, and then the game becomes so much easier. They found it, and they look like they have awakened.
Yeah, awakened indeed. It was every single time we saw, oh, there's a TP happening on the opposite side of EG Academy. There's going to be a Renekton that is coming on through eventually to the fight. So Dignitas Academy coming out with the win there. I have learned that as far as the interview that we have coming up, it'll be from JJ, who Crumbs was also very influential in a lot of those fights as the follow-up to secure here too.
Nice. Yeah, JJ, very vocal. He's been taking, he says that now playing with the team, he can be much more focused on his mechanics. So he gets to look better because you have to micromanage less. So I just like to see that players can focus more on their own gameplay.
Well, with that, let's go ahead and hear from JJ himself, the support for Dignitas Academy. Happy to have him here on the broadcast. JJ, how you doing?
Pretty good, thanks.
I mean, I would say you have to be feeling pretty good after this was a 2-0 week for Dignitas Academy. After kind of some of the trade-offs in past week, what does it mean for you and the rest of the team to have such secure victories here towards the end of the regular season?
I think it means a lot because we've kind of, I think, been a lot better than we've shown in a lot of our matches, and I think we hit a pretty big bump a couple weeks ago that let us kind of just refocus and be like, okay guys, we're scoring a lot of things up, what do we need to fix? And then we worked on those things, and the way we're playing now is just much cleaner, and we always have a good game plan going into every game.
Yeah, clean's definitely the word. We saw a lot of great fights coming out of you and the rest of the squad, particularly coming off the flanks from Lorlo on that Renekton. So from a viewer's perspective, it seemed like, all right, this is clearly the play. They want to get the flank to go into the team fight. So is that just what you were planning on every single time when it came to late game to secure those eventual victories?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we realized that our team comp was pretty dive-centric, and the best way for us to start fights, it's just Renekton or Irelia always on the flank, followed up by Galio, Kaisa just flying in. So every dragon, every objective, we're just saying, okay, the objective doesn't matter as long as we play for the fight, get a good flank, we'll be all right.
Now, one thing too, when looking at this team and maybe some of the development coming alongside of it, you obviously have some veterans like yourself, like Lorlo, like Acadian, but some young talent as well. I mean, we're looking over towards that bot lane. What has it been like for you to develop this bot lane, being that you are such a veteran voice that has been around with some experience?
I would say it's been pretty just easy working with Spawn. I mean, he was pretty good coming in. I think the only things we really had to work on are communication and things that you don't really learn as much in amateur, I think, and just kind of more macro concepts. But mechanically and laning, I didn't really have to do much, and I think we got on the same page relatively quickly, so it's been pretty good.
We know that there is a lot to consider with every win and loss here, being that it determines who goes on to Proving Grounds, who has to compete in additional tournaments. Last time when we heard from Acadian, he seemed to see positives on both possibilities, since practice is always good as well. I'm curious, do you have an opinion on that regard, if it would be a benefit if you do get to have those additional games versus just slotting directly into Proving Grounds?
I think, like you said, there's pros and cons to both. I definitely would rather not be under all the pressure of going to the Tier 1 tournaments. We've been calling it the Gulag, so I'd rather not go to the Gulag. And although I do agree that like playing those kinds of tournaments and playing an amateur right now just gives you a huge upside. Like you get to play so many games. I saw a stat yesterday that one of the top amateur teams, Solified, had played like 40 something games, and this is our 8th game today. So I was pretty jealous that they've gotten so much stage time. But yeah, I think I'm okay trying to just get top 6 and then playing in Proving Grounds from there.
Yeah, okay, having that security. I mean, teams like Solified have a lot of experience on those rosters too, with Academy players and beyond. Being that we are in kind of the final weeks of this regular season before we get into that playoff territory, on behalf of you and the team, to Dignitas fans out there, do you have any words, JJ?
Yeah, thanks for supporting us. I see a lot of people in the chat always, you know, rooting for Lorlo, rooting for the Cadian, rooting for Spawn and Yusui. Like, we all individually have our little groups and fan bases cheering us on, so I'm always really grateful to see that.
We're rooting you on it too, JJ. Thank you so much for stopping by in this interview.
Thank you.
What a win from Dignitas Academy, Crumbs. A 2-0 week for them to top things off, and what was really just a crazy day of games.
It's amazing as a player to go home after a 2-0. It's the best thing that could happen. It's like your birthday plus Christmas came, and plus you graduated after putting in all the great work that you did in the majority of the year. So it's a great feeling there out of Dignitas. But yeah, like you said, great games there, and you showed up for the first cast and had amazing games. I think it's just a good omen. Just got to keep doing it.
Oh yeah, I want to thank all the teams for definitely bringing that excitement to the games today. I was so excited to be able to, knowing I was going to come on and cast here today. I'd love to do more in the future. It's such a good time, Crumbs. And I mean, speaking of that good time, it does come off of some upsets today. Just looking back at the 5 games we have before we close things out, any moments that have popped out in your head that you think the fans should be taking away for themselves before going into next week's games?
Yeah, I think the biggest lesson is something that isn't entirely for Academy, but for every single league. Watch the Cloud9 game, how they lost, and they lost at level 1 with the Vayne. So we have such an easy time to blame that pick, but the level 1 was severely messed up. And so in many games that you see around the world where champions or something is obviously going wrong, you can often just look at the play itself as the primary culprit, not the champion for the experimentation. So go a little bit easier on the champion experiments and go a little bit harder on, hey, you need to play it better.
Well, with that considered, then, Crumbs, I mean, Cloud9 was the team that brought that through. It didn't quite work out for them. So would you say, though, that that's definitely not something that should cause you to discount them, though, going into the future games? Yes, we see this experimentation, but I don't think it diminishes at all the strength that all of the players do bring to the table here.
Not at all. It's Cloud9. They still were bold enough to bust out Vayne top. So when it worked out, we would have praised them for such creativity, such daring, but it didn't, and we looked exactly why. But now we know, hey, they're at least trying with this. They've been practicing with it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have busted it out. So it's something that you always have in the back of your mind when facing C9.
Yeah. Always got to keep it in your brain when facing them and all of the teams that we saw today. As far as the day, though, that does mean that we have come to our conclusion for the week of Academy. Next week, things will be kicking back up. I believe that we don't necessarily know yet, Crumbs, if it's going to be 2 days versus 1 day. It kind of depends on if they have to have any tiebreakers or things of the sort. So make sure, everybody, that you are keeping it locked on the schedule and where you should be looking out for future broadcasts. Crumbs, any last words before we send things off here today?
GG!
GG, baby. Well, everyone, on behalf of myself, the remote broadcast crew, Crumbs, me, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to LCS Academy. We will see you next week, where the action continues to determine which teams will be moving on to Proving Grounds and which have to fight another day to get there. But until then, everyone, good morning, afternoon, evening, and good night.